The assessment of humanities dash in the next 100 years, which has taken 21 months to complete, argues strongly that to achieve long and healthy lives for all 9 billion people dash to be living in 2050, the twin issues of population and dash must be pushed to the top of political and economic agenda. Both issues have been largely dashed by politicians and played down by environment and development for 20 years. The number of people living on the planet has never been higher, their levels of consumption are dash, and vast changes are taking place in the environment. We move ahead. We dash choose to rebalance the use of resources, dash a more egalitarian pattern of consumption, or we can choose to do nothing and to dash into a downward spiral of economic and environmental ills, dash to a more unequal and inhospitable future. At today's rate of population increase, developing countries will have to build the equivalent of a city of 1 million people every 5 days from now to 2050, says the report. Global population growth is dash, and for the next few decades. By 2050, it is projected that today's population of 7 billion will have grown by 2.3 billion, the equivalent of New China and in India. Right? So here's the passage in front of us. Yes. And we have 10 blanks. So after going through the passage, I have a couple of responses here, which says environment is changing by human activity, assessment of population and their consumption after 20 years. All right. So Pawan has given me a couple of keywords in that one-line summary. Upcoming hazards of immense population growth, that's Amit. So there's some great one-liners that you've come up with in terms of assessing what the passage is about. So let's get started with applying that knowledge in arriving at the answer for our blanks. The first blank, the assessment of humanities dash in the next 100 years, which has taken 21 months to complete. So the options for blank 1 are prospective, perception, prospects, aims, and prospecting. So what do we need here and what can we quickly eliminate? Let's look at our first blank. So I already have some responses saying, some of you have saying option 1 prospective, some of you are saying option 2 perception. But let's quickly look at it. What can I quickly eliminate in this passage or in this option? For the first blank, I know I need, we're going to apply a little bit. So let's fall back on our strategies. One of the strategies that we saw is, word class, right? Do I need a noun form? Do I need a verb form? Do I need an adjective form? Or do I need an adverb form? The assessment of humanity is what in the next 100 years? So this blank is answering the question what, which means I need a noun form, right? So from my options, what can I quickly eliminate? What is not in a noun form? Can I have some responses? What is not in the noun form? Option 1, prospective. Prospective is in adjective form, right? Yeah? Prospective is an adjective form. What else can I eliminate? Which is not a noun form. Prospecting. Right? The fifth one, I can eliminate that as well. Prospecting is a ing verb form. Right? I don't need this form as well. So I have to choose between option 2, 3 and 4. Well, if I look at option 2, 3 and 4, then it boils down to, so we've applied the strategy of word class to eliminate 2 wrong answer choices. And then we've left with second, third and fourth one. So let's look at it. Second one, perception. Perception means insight or interpretation, right? And then we have prospects. Prospects means possibility. The chances are. And aims, we know what aims are. Aims are, again, intention or purpose. So out of these 2, 3 and 4, which do you think is the most appropriate? Yeah, Raja has come back and said, yes, 1 and 5 we can eliminate. That's what we've eliminated, Raja. So and then we're looking at 2, 3, 4. We're trying to figure out which is the closest one that can fit the blank meaningfully, right? So here we're going to apply just vocabulary, right? Word choice. So after word class, we're moving back to the next strategy saying, I need a word that can meaningfully fit this context. The assessment of humanities dash in the next 100 years. Again, you have a clue word, assessment, right? Assessment is another clue word, which means tests. There have been evaluations that have taken place where they're talking about what are the chances of humanities in the next 100 years. What are their chances, right? So the word that brings that meaning is option 3, right? A lot of you came back and said option 2, but we're not talking about insight, or we're not talking about what the interpretation is. We're talking about what are the chances of humanity as such. So the assessment of humanity's chances in the next 100 years, which has taken 21 months to complete, the assessment has taken 21 months to complete, argues strongly that to achieve long and healthy lives for all 9 billion people. Okay, so we're edging closer to second blank, but for the first blank, as I said, the closest option, let me see if anybody gave that answer. I have Subrang who's given that answer. Most of you have come back and said it's option 2, which is not the case, as I explained, right? We're not talking about an insight or an interpretation. Keeping in mind our keyword assessment, we're talking about what are the chances in the next 100 years, right? And the closest word that brings in the meaning of chances or possibility is option 3, prospects, right? Let me just write it down. Right? We're looking at chances. Moving ahead, we move to the second blank. So for all 9 billion people, dash to be living in 2050. We're talking about the people in the future, right? So let's come back again. In that second blank, we can again apply word class. What can we eliminate? If you apply word class for blank 2, okay, somebody asked why not aims? Fourth one, let's again quickly address that. See, aims, again I said, is purpose. The meaning of aims is either purpose or intention, right? Now, the entire sentence, we're talking about, look at the following sentence after the blank. We're talking about long and healthy lives, right? The purpose is already there in the context. So we're saying, what are the chances of humans having long and healthy life? We're not saying what is the purpose, right? Are you following? Whoever told why not aims? Yeah, just to answer that person's question. Same goes with perception, which is insight here. Right? Okay, moving on. The second blank again, let's have some answers. Let's have some answers for the second blank. Expect, aspiring, expectation, expected, aspirations. Now, let's apply word class. What form do we need here? An action word. An action word is a verb form, right? So the assessment of humanity's chances or prospects in the next 100 years, which has taken 21 months to complete, argues strongly that to achieve long and healthy lives for all 9 billion people, dash to be living in 2050. So verb, yes, thank you. Who is that? Ishnav, Anjal Ishnav, okay. Which is correct. So what can I quickly eliminate? What is not in the verb form in, from the second blank, the options, what can I quickly eliminate? I will eliminate option 3, which is a noun form, expectation. I will eliminate option 5, which is again a noun form, aspirations. All right. Now I have to choose between 1, 2, and 4. Expect, aspiring, and expected. Out of these 3, which will fit meaningfully? Right? So we've applied word class. We've eliminated 2 wrong answer choices. We come back. We just have to apply a little bit of tense and logic, right? To achieve long and healthy lives for all 9 billion people, expect to be living, or aspiring to be living, or expected to be living. Now, aspiring is a wrong word choice again, right? Because meaningfully, it doesn't make sense to have aspiring. How can we say that 9 billion people are aspiring to be living in 2050? That doesn't make sense. Expected, right? That's the closest option. Yes, Raja has given me the right answer. Ranu Radha also gave me the right answer, which is option 4. Expected. So that's our right answer choice. Let me use the right ones to eliminate so you know the difference. Right? Okay, so for the first 2 blanks, yes, look what we've done. We've applied word class, we eliminated wrong answer choices, we moved forward, then we applied a little bit of vocabulary, and the second one, we applied a little bit of context in terms of what will be the right word that will fit the blank. So 9 billion people expected to be living in 2050. Now we move to the third blank. The twin issues of population and dash must be pushed to the top of political and economic agenda. Let's look at third blank. What are our options? Option 1, consumption. Option 2, resumption. Option 3, revamp. Option 4, reconstruction. Option 5, expenditure. Okay. So out of these 5 options, now what strategy do you think we can apply? If you paid attention to the first 10 strategies, yeah. So how did you see? Amit says resumption is the answer. A couple of you are saying the first option is the answer. But how do we arrive? Always remember in close passage, you can always rely on the context because the context will help you, right? So can someone point out to me, if you're saying it's option 1, how do you know it's option 1? Yes, Pawan, you're correct when you say it should be a noun form. But the beauty is, if you look at the options, all of them are noun forms, right? Consumption is noun form, resumption is noun form, revamp is noun form, reconstruction is noun form, expenditure also is in the noun form. Correct? So all 5 are in the noun form. So what do we do now? The passage has told you. I'm just waiting for someone to give me the answer, but that's okay. We'll move forward. Remember, one of the other things that I said is, I think one of the last points in our strategies, or just the last, but for context clue maybe, okay, right. If you look through the passage, through the entire passage, remember I said look for repeated words or phrases. Any keywords will be repeated throughout the passage. So can you pick 1 or 2 words that are repeated in the passage? Quickly go through the passage. Okay. I'm just going to give you a minute, right? I'm going to give you a minute. In the first half, we have this. And in the second half, I want you to see if any words are repeated. So if you look at it, population, exactly. Maulik is correct, right? Population, the word population appears at least 3 or 4 times in the entire passage. Let's quickly see that. See, I I have population here. Okay. Let's go to the next one and see again where population is appearing, right? I have another population here. I have population here. So I have population, and do I have anything else? I have another word, consumption, right? So these words are repeated in the passage, right? So I have consumption again here. So I have consumption twice, population at least 4 times, which means these are predominantly the first issues, right? So when they say the twin issues of population, and you don't have to worry, it has to be choice 1 here. Consumption must be pushed to the top of political and economic agenda. So the topic sentence, surrounding context, as well as throughout the passage, keywords that are repeated are what the issue is about. So look for keywords, you'll be able to arrive at the right answer. So those who said resumption, incorrect. Resumption means to resume again, beginning again, right? None of the other options were mentioned. Revamp. What's revamp? Revamp is to renovate. Again, it doesn't make sense. Meaningfully doesn't fit in the context. Reconstruction is activity of constructing something again. Not right. Expenditure is an expense, again, not the right word in this context. So consumption is our answer. Moving on, 4th one. So both issues, which is population and consumption, have been largely dashed by politicians and played down by environment and development for 20 years. Now, we're going to apply a little bit of one of the strategy. I'll give you the clue what strategy I'm talking about, right? The strategy for the 4th blank is going back just to show you what the strategies are. Yeah. So out of these strategies, if we look for the 4th blank, it's a little bit of positive and negative detail. Okay. I want you to pay attention to positive and negative detail. That's the strategy that we're applying for blank 4. So now look at the options. Read that sentence. Both issues have been largely dashed by politicians and played down by environment and development for 20 years. So the options are ignoring, ignored, cared, attended, attention. Now, there is a keyword. Bhaskar, Jitin, Ghosh has given me option, I think 2. You're saying ignored. Okay, which is fine. But my question is different. You know, for those who are struggling, can you identify one keyword which is either giving a positive or a negative meaning? Can anybody identify that keyword in the sentence? There is a keyword which is giving me either a positive or a negative meaning, which is helping me. Amit, I need the keyword in the sentence, not the answer option. Right? There is a keyword in the sentence which is giving me a played down. Very good. Who's that? Kaharsha. Yes, that is our keyword. Played down. What is the meaning of played down? Right here. Played down. So can somebody tell me what is the meaning of played down? Played down means to lessen the effect or importance of something. Right? Both issues have been largely dashed by politicians and played down. So played down means you're lessening the effect or importance of something. It's a negative thing. Out of my options, I can eliminate cared, attended, and attention. 3, 4, 5. I have to choose between 1 and 2. Because we're talking about an action in the past, I need not the continuous form, but the past tense form ignored. Right? So again, if you're confused between the options, look for clue words in the context which is either giving you a positive or a negative meaning, and eliminate answer choices. Moving on. Fifth blank. So the number of people living on the planet has never been higher. Their levels of consumption are dash, and vast changes are taking place in the environment. Again, what are my options for fifth blank? Unprecedented, limited, useful, surprised, and amazed. Again, you can apply positive, negative detail for the fifth blank and eliminate some options. So obviously, if the people are higher, if the people living on the planet are higher, are more in number, right? Their levels of consumption. Sonia, Surya, Asha, Pavan, are you sure? Is that the answer? I want you to apply a little bit of logic. Look at that sentence again. It says the number of people living on the planet has never been higher, which means more people. How can their levels of consumption be limited? I want you to think again. So Harsha says eliminate 3, 4, 5. That is correct, Harsha. We can safely eliminate 3, 4, 5. I hope Harsha is talking about fifth blank and not fourth blank. All of you have come back and told me limited is the answer for the fifth blank. But I want you to please go back and think about the meaning that the sentence is giving me. Amit has come back to me. Okay, Harsha. So Amit has come back to me and saying the fifth blank, the option is 1. Pavan also says it's 1. What is the meaning of unprecedented? What is the meaning of unprecedented? Unprecedented means unheard of, something exceptional, something unusual. Right? So the number of people living on the planet has never been higher. Obviously, their levels of consumption are going to be huge. Right? So how can it be limited? Limited is the contradictory word of what we want. So if I have to eliminate options, I will immediately eliminate first 2, option 2. It's not going to be useful, right? If the levels of consumption are going to be higher because the number of people are more, it's definitely not going to be useful. We are talking about the levels of consumption, right? So I need an adjective describing those levels of consumption. Now, surprised and amazed can be adjectives, but they're not describing the levels of consumption. You can be surprised at the people's level of consumption or amazed at the people's level of consumption, but I need a word that is directly describing the levels of consumption, which is unprecedented. Right? I don't know how many of you got this correct. Yeah, Amit, which it's like unparalleled, has never heard of. Right? So please keep in mind the context. Understand what meaning the context is conveying. Is it giving a positive or a negative meaning? All right. So let's do a quick review, right, in the first 5 blanks itself before we move on to the next 5 blanks. A lot of you came back and gave me option 2, which is not the right answer, right? So let's do a quick recap. So for the first blank, what we did is we applied word class, we eliminated wrong answer choices, right? And we said the answer is 3. Then we applied a little bit of vocabulary to choose between perception and aims, and we said why it's not the right fit. For the blank 2, again, we applied word class, we eliminated wrong answer choices. Yeah, and we arrived at expected. Then for 3, we said we looked at the passage itself and we looked at repeated words. Keywords are always repeated, and keywords tell us that's what the passage is revolving around, right? That is the issue. So that helped us arrive at the right answer, which is consumption. Then for the 4th one, we looked at context clues. Within the sentence, there was a word, there was a keyword played down, which gave us a negative meaning. We eliminated wrong answer choices and we arrived at ignored, option 2. Likewise, for the 5th blank also, we did the same thing. we looked at the context, it gave us not a positive meaning, right? We're talking about the number of people on the planet are high. Obviously, their levels of consumption are also going to be high. So limited, useful, surprised, amazed, eliminated. The only option that describes the levels of consumption which will directly correlate to the number of people being high on the planet is unprecedented, never heard of, unimaginable, exceptional, unusual. All right, we're going to move to the next 5 blanks. All right, so here we are. We dash choose to rebalance the use of resources dash a more egalitarian pattern of consumption. Or we can choose to do nothing and to. So 6, 7, 8, 9, all of them almost, are in the same sentence, a long sentence. So all 4 blanks are in that context itself. So let's quickly see what are the options for that. I'm having a bit of a delay getting your responses. So let's look at our options, right, for the 6th blank. I already have people giving me answers. Pankaj has said can, Anjal says have, but let's see. We dash choose to rebalance the use of resources dash a more egalitarian pattern of consumption. Yeah, so a lot of you are coming back and saying can, okay. So let's look at it. Is that the answer? We dash choose to rebalance the use of resources. We would have, we should be, we can, we are, we have. So grammatically, we know obviously for the 6th blank, we need a word that brings in the meaning of possibility, right? Logically, that's the right fit for the 6th blank. Pavan, why do you say it should be? We should be choose to rebalance. If I'm using option 2, right? If I'm using option 2, what should I strike off? B, right? Because that BE is there, I can't use that word. We should choose to rebalance the use of resources makes more sense, not we should be. Yeah? So for the 6th blank, the answer option is option 3. We can, yeah, it's possible that we can do this. We can either do this, we can choose to rebalance the use of resources dash a more egalitarian pattern of consumption. Now, let's look at the options that we have. For the 7th blank, we have prepositions to, by, for, with, of. So Yagna says for, Anjal says with. Now, let me give you a hint, okay? The preposition that we need here is a preposition that gives us or brings us the meaning of towards a given state, right? There is some sort of, people are expected to move in the direction of a more egalitarian pattern of consumption, right? So we can, by how? By rebalancing the use of resources. So we have to use our resources wisely. So I need a preposition that will give me the meaning so as to reach with the resultant condition of. The resultant condition is we need this particular pattern of consumption by wisely using our resources. So what is that preposition which brings in that meaning where it is saying people use your resources so that we move towards this pattern of consumption? I'm giving you clues in the sentences that I'm saying. So let's see who comes up with the right answer. And people who are in the habit of reading, if you are in the, you can also, some of you can also do this. You substitute each of those prepositions in that blank and see which sounds right. But it's a tricky thing to do that. Yes, Pankaj and Kaharsha, correct. The right preposition to fit blank 7 is option 1, to. Why so? Because to is a preposition that gives the meaning of towards a given state, with the resultant condition of. We already established the fact that the condition that they want is this particular pattern of consumption, egalitarian pattern of consumption, right? With, of, for, by are not the right prepositions that give or bring in that meaning in this context. You also have clues. Look at the next sentence itself, before the 8th blank. Or we can choose to do nothing. What is the preposition used here again? To. Yeah, or we can choose to do nothing and to dash into a downward spiral of economic and environmental ills. 8th blank, drifted, drift, flew, flowing, or walk. What are your options? Again, for the 8th blank, what word class do we need? What can I quickly eliminate? To is your clue. But if you look at the 8th option, all of it is in the verb form. Anybody doesn't know the meaning of drift? What is the meaning of drift? People are giving me the responses. What's the meaning of drift? Drift means to move aimlessly, right? To move aimlessly. So, in this context, they are saying, or we can choose to do nothing. So, when you have nothing to do, the most appropriate word that will fit in the context is, when will you have nothing to do? When you have no aim, right? So, bringing in that meaning is the word drift, but we need the right form. So, what can we eliminate here is option 1, out, and all the remaining 3, 4, and 5 does not fit the blank meaningfully or otherwise, right? Or grammatically. So let's recap that before we move to the 9th blank. So we can choose to rebalance the use of resources to a more egalitarian pattern of consumption, or we can choose to do nothing and to drift into a downward spiral of economic and environmental ills, dash to a more unequal and inhospitable future. What do we have for the 9th blank? Led, held, leading, going, doing. This is another easy one. Logically, we need a word that brings in the meaning of, to bring in a particular course, or to guide in a particular course or action. Yes, Kahasha, correct. We don't need the past tense form. Some of you have come back and given option 1 for the 9th one. We're saying this is a possibility that this can happen, which means we're talking about we can choose to rebalance. So everything is happening current, it's an ongoing process they're talking about. We need an ing form, which is option 3, leading. Right? Going and doing again does not fit the context meaningfully. We can't say environmental ills doing to a more unequal. Does not make sense. Going to a more unequal, not going anywhere. It's talking about an outcome leading to a more unequal and inhospitable future. So leading makes, okay. Thank you, Harsha. Thanks for, letting me know, because I kept calling some other name. Perfect. So here we are. We just left with the last 10th blank. Now, out of the strategies, we can still apply one of those strategies, one of the 10 that we saw. The whole context, someone said, someone wants to explain 9th blank. So let's do that again. See, if you look at the whole context where there are 4 blanks in that one sentence, I said it's a long sentence. Let's read that sentence. We can choose to rebalance the use of resources to a more egalitarian pattern of consumption, or we can choose to do nothing and to drift into a downward spiral of economic environmental ills, leading to a more unequal and hospitable future. Why can't I use the first option, led? Because I need some other words if I have to use option 1, right? If I have to use option 1, it should read into a downward spiral of economic and environmental ills, which will have led to a more unequal and inhospitable future. But that's not the context, right? We don't have other words supporting the word led, and we're not talking about a past event. Likewise, held 1 and 2, we can eliminate because we're not talking about a completed action, right? We need to choose between 3, 4, 5, and we already established the fact that 4 and 5 are not meaningfully the right fit in this context. Even if you're confused, look at what meaning you need, right? The outcome. We need a word that is talking about something that will be guided in a particular course or action, to bring in a particular course, and that word is leading. Moving on, at today's rate of population increase, developing countries will have to build the equivalent of a city of 1 million people every 5 days from now to 2050, says the report. Global population growth is dash for the next few decades. What are the options? Evitable, inevitable, inevitably, viable, dispensable. So for the last option, what I want you to do is, right, if you are a little confused, I already have a lot of answers, but in case you are still confused, what you can do is you can substitute that blank with your own word. If you have to substitute that blank, with your own word, apart from the answers there, can I have some other words? If you have to put your own word in the 10th blank, what word will you put? Can I have some answers? Global population growth is dash for the next few decades. Give me your own words. Give me some of your own words. Unavoidable. Yes, Pankaj. Any other words? Not controllable. Okay, Pavan. Yeah, something that's impossible to avoid or prevent or certain, right? So once you've done that, inescapable. So once you've done that, go back to the options and see out of the 5, which is the one that is closest in meaning to the one that I came up with. It's obviously option 2, inevitable. Something that is certain, something that cannot be avoided, something that cannot be prevented, right? Evitable is just the opposite, so obviously that's not the right choice. Inevitably, it's not in the right form, it's in the ly form. We don't need that. We need an adjective describing how the growth is going to be. Viable is not the right word because it means practicable. Dispensable, again, is not the right fit. Unimportant or not essential, something that can be dispensed, that's dispensable. That's not the right fit in this context, right? We've arrived at the right answer option.